Hello, Lou. Welcome, friends. Sorry, I was daydreaming a little bit over here. My apologies. So, welcome to episode 201. I hope you were able to join us for episode 200. Today, we're going to be talking about chapter 18, verses 29 through 32. Last time, we talked about the satvick, rajasic, and tamasic qualities of a doer, somebody who does an action. Today, we're going to be talking about the satvic, rajasic, and tamasic qualities of your intellect and your ability to persevere.
Mm-hmm.
In Sanskrit, your intellect is known as buddhi, and your ability to continue to focus with sheer determination and resolute actions is known as dhriti. So, intellect is known as buddhi, and that's what does it do? So let's first talk about verse 29. It says a satvic buddhi and a dhriti allows a person to take the right action, a satvic action, and then stick to that path till you get to the end. So that's a satvic buddhi and a satvic dhriti. Buddhi or intellect, just to revise, is that part of you that is above your mind. Mind is the one that has thoughts, wishes, desires, vasanas. But it doesn't necessarily know, doesn't know which is right and which is wrong. That comes from the buddhi. The intellect says, decide, viveka or vichara. And it says, which way should I go? This or that. It decides which way should I think, which way should I do, everything. What's your duty? What's the right thing to do? That's all the qualities of a buddhi. And dhriti is steadfastness. It keeps you firmly on the path that the buddhi decides to do it. Because you could have a weak dhriti, you could have a strong intellect, but weak resoluteness, and you could go way wide, go this way or that way. The previous verses, we talked about satvic, rajasic, and tamasic qualities of renunciation, knowledge, action, and then lastly, actor, doer. Today, for the next few verses, we're going to be talking about buddhi and dhriti. Buddhi, as we said, is intellect, to understand. So in chess, for instance, is in Hindi, Marathi, Sanskrit known as buddhi bal. Bal means strength. Buddhi bal means the strength of your intellect. So why is it strength of your intellect? And basically, chess, who some will argue very vociferously that chess was invented in India with all the kings and queens and armies that they had over there. And they say that this used to be used to strengthen the intellect, because those of you who know how to play chess, you have to say, okay, what will happen? What will happen? This decision. And the more you think, because you grandmasters can think like 20, 30, 40 moves ahead. So they have very strong intellects. The ability to do a puzzle, to use your reason with and analyze it correctly. To think, to analyze, to arrive at a conclusion is the function of your intellect or buddhi. The process uses, as I said before, vichara and viveka. Think about it and then analyze. All scientific advances in this world that have been made are all because of intellect, of buddhi, not because of your mind. The mind only thinks, and thinks in terms of desires and what it wants. Mana is mind, only comes with emotions. So let's do verse 30. Verse 30 says, that buddhi, which through analysis, thinking, and reasoning, decodes which action is to be done and which is not to be done, which is to be feared and that is not to be feared, which causes bondage and which causes liberation. So he's talking about a few different things that buddhi causes us to do, because we could go this way or that way, just like in chess. Should I move the bishop? Should I move the rook? Which, by the way, in Indian chess, the bishop is called, because that was Christian transformation, the bishop is a camel and the rook is an elephant. Any army that the king used to have would have elephants, horses, camels to go in through the desert, and lots of foot soldiers. And there was a king, and there wasn't a queen, there was a prime minister, an advisor for the king. That was who was next to him. The prime minister had more power than the king. That's why he could move everywhere, because he was the one that made the decision and advised the king.
Right.
So once the buddhi understands, it influences three things. Once the buddhi understands something, it influences the senses, the 10 senses, it influences the mind, and it influences the actions, right? Senses, mind, and actions are influenced by buddhi that understands. So you see a rope in the twilight under a bush, and you say, whoops, that's a snake, back away. And you see it as a snake, you believe it's a snake. Your intellect, your buddhi believes it's a snake. But then you start to analyze it, and for a number of reasons, you say, well, I've sat here for an hour, he hasn't even twitched or moved. I've thrown stones near it, and it's not moving. I think it's a rope. And whatever you do to convince yourself by taking a long stick and moving that, and you say it's definitely not a snake because I pushed it with the stick and it's not moving, then your buddhi realizes it is a rope. Once the buddhi realizes something, the senses say, oh yeah, it's a rope. How could I even have thought it's a snake?
Yeah.
So then your mind says, nah, that's not a snake, that's a rope. And your actions then follow. So once the buddhi sees it as a rope, the eyes, the mind, the senses no longer see it as a snake, and it will always then think of it as a rope. So similarly, with other things in life, once you have your sense objects which are attracted to something, once your buddhi says, this is not good for me, I shouldn't be doing it, it loses interest, your senses lose interest, your mind. You might find that hard to believe, but believe me, it's true. The buddhi, therefore, can be strengthened. How can it be strengthened? By satsang. Satsang is good company. You all sit together, you discuss, you talk, the same sort of things. You don't have a person in there that's trying to move you to a different, weaker position. It can be strengthened by following the scriptures, by what you're doing now, good company, good teachers. Once you follow all of this, your buddhi becomes stronger. So, what are the qualities of a buddhi and dhriti? First, karya and akarya. Karya is what ought to be done, and akarya is what ought not to be done. Pravritti is actions which lead you to more worldly entanglement. Pravritti. Much of the drive for your actions which lead you to more worldly entanglement come from inherent tendencies within you. Very important. You don't just automatically get born and say, okay, listen, based on what I've learned in school, college, I'm interested in this. If you watch carefully, little children, they have their inherent tendencies from the time they're born. They could be siblings, they could be twins, but they have their own inherent tendencies. It's fascinating to me. These inherent tendencies come from past lives. Their nature, our nature, your vasanas come from, to some extent, from this life, but to a larger extent from previous lives. So your swadharma is your own personal dharma, your own innate qualities. Dharma is, this is how I remember it, the dharma of sugar is sweetness. It can be powdered sugar, crystalline sugar, brown sugar, sugar cubes, but the inherent dharma of sugar is sweetness. That is its innate quality. Each one of us has a swadharma. Each one of us has a dharma that is yours. According to all of these above things that I mentioned, your worldly entanglements, your nature, your inherent tendencies, your desires, your likes, your dislikes, your vasanas, these all go into making your swadharma. So your swadharma is what you need to do. Don't do what is not a good. That's like going against the grain. You know how they say with sanding something, go against the grain, polishing something, go with the grain, not against. So you must go with what is your natural tendencies. That's your swadharma. If you go against it, it's called going paradharma, against your dharma. Your mind runs after the likes and dislikes, raga and dvesha. The mind does that. Your intellect does not do that. Your intellect actually says, listen, I know you would like to do that, Mr. Mind, but this is what you ought to be doing. And so it's necessary to strengthen your buddhi. Then comes karma phala tyaga, which is renunciation of the fruit of action. We talked about this in the last episode. Nivritti is the path of renunciation. So pravritti, we said, was the path towards worldly entanglement and bondage, and nivritti is that of the path of renunciation, withdrawing from the world. Everybody's mind has impurities, like we said previously: guilt, hurt, anger, jealousy, greed. These are all impure, unclean kinds of tendencies of our minds. But everybody's mind also is clean by nature, by very fact that your mind is a good mind. Even the worst people have within them sympathy, compassion, love. These worst terrorists, for instance, might show their sympathy, compassion, love only to those that they really care for, but they have it in them. Every one of our minds and buddhis have this ability to have good, clean nature. So what causes us not to be clean, to be unclean in terms of impurities? It is our raga, dvesha, and our vasanas. When you have raga, dvesha, likes, dislikes, vasanas, you tend to block and cover your sympathies, your compassion, your love, your good qualities, and then you become impure by nature. So the worldly do's and don'ts versus universal values also comes into it. Worldly do's and don'ts are like traffic laws. You must follow this law. You may not do this. You may not do that. But universal do's and don'ts are things that we say you can't hurt somebody. There's no law against hurting somebody by speaking or calling them some name or saying something about their looks or their appearance or their qualities. There's no law against that. It's free speech. You can say anything you want. But universal education, if you were to teach a child, you'd say, don't do that. It's hurtful.
Right.
And although there's no worldly law against it, the universal law says you shouldn't be doing it. So in universal laws also, today what is allowed may not be good 10 years from now, 100 years from now. Today what is not allowed may be very much allowed 10 years from now. We know that from what we watch on TV or what we read or the way we behave or what clothes we wear. What was not allowed 100 years from now is absolutely allowed today. So these are values that are do's and don'ts that are not worldly do's and don'ts. They are not universal do's and don'ts. They go by education. So education is very necessary in order for your buddhi and your dhriti to be on the right track for what today's do's and don'ts are. Next comes bhaya and abhaya, which is fear and no fear.
Mm-hmm.
Fear, also worry goes in the same category as fear. Most of us tend to worry more than we fear. Fear is like a acute fright, like, you're faced with a mugger standing, a robber, a burglar standing in your bedroom at night when you open your eyes and it's dark. That's fear. You face a tiger suddenly. That's fear. Worry is more insidious and it's constant, and it's just your mind is going over and over and over something, trying to say, what will happen if this happens, that happens. It's just your mind going round and round. Your intellect can get you to a firm decision, say, do this. And once you have that strong intellect, once you say, I'm doing this, then your strong intellect can also tell your mind, stop thinking about it, stop worrying, because I've done it, and now let's see what happens. And a strong intellect, a strong buddhi, allows you to circle past, to go around your worrying. And we get into these situations because our buddhi is weak. We do things that cause us to get into situations where we fear and worry. If your buddhi is strong, you can actually stay away from these situations because your buddhi tells you, look, you do that, you will get into a situation where you might be facing fear, bhaya, or a worry. So don't do it. What are those situations? Sensual. You do things that could get you into trouble by following your sense organs that say, do this. And you get into trouble. I don't think we need examples. I think you understand what I mean.
Yeah.
Indulgences of all different kinds. Emotional relationships, even if it's not sensual, just emotional relationships, you can get into worries and fear. Intellectual prejudices will get you into worry and fear. A sattvic intellect guides you appropriately and you won't get into these things. You can't just say, I'm brave. That'll be being foolhardy. If you're in Manhattan, New York, or Boston City, there are certain parts that you don't want to go at night. You
Yep.
can't say, well, my buddhi is strong. I will not. I'll go there. No, that's being foolhardy. He's saying, let your buddhi be strong enough to say, listen, this, no matter how much karate you know and how strong you are, you don't want to go here. You just stay away from it unless you have to. And he says, if you have to, then just take proper precautions. If you have to go into a place like that, take your bodyguards, take guns, take whatever you need to protect yourself. Otherwise, don't go. Don't create a situation which you cannot handle. Either do it safely or don't do it at all. Stay away from dangerous situations. Then you don't have to worry about bhaya and abhaya. And the last one is bondage versus moksha or freedom. So bondage, this is a term that is often misunderstood, and it'll need an hour or more to talk about it. But bondage means being attached to, and you're bound, therefore, to the sansar, to the world. So bondage, you say, well, I'm bound to my job, I'm bound to my house, I'm bound to my wife, my kids, my husband. I'm bound to just having to shave every day. That's bondage of a different kind. Bondage really means ignorance. You are bound to your way of life, your way of thinking, and what you do because of your ignorance about what it is that we are talking about. This knowledge, this self-knowledge that gives you the awareness of moving apart from this is what is going to give you liberation. Bondage is the ignorance that keeps you bound to your present way of life and your present way of thinking. When you're bound, you're attached to your body and your mind and your intellect. When you indulge your senses, you get bound to further going deeper and deeper into this. When you indulge your mind and your intellect, you're bound to your emotions, negative emotions. You're bound to your thoughts, negative thoughts. So all of these causes you to be bound to your mind, your intellect, your senses, etc. So now we go to verse 31. The buddhi, or the intellect, that does not know what's proper and improper. This is known as a rajasic buddhi. What is proper and improper, what is to be done and what is not to be done, is rajasic buddhi. That does not know how to do this. Ayatha is knowing something not as it is. You think you know it, but it is not as it is. You think that it is correct, but it is not correct. That is rajasic buddhi. You think that something that is against the grain of what is taught is the right way to do it.
Right.
That's rajasic. And vice versa. What shouldn't be done, you think should be done. What should be done, you think shouldn't be done. The rajasic person with a rajasic buddhi does not know what is right and what is wrong. It's like going down a wrong highway, right? If I'm going down a wrong highway, not the wrong way on a highway, but the wrong highway, instead of taking 90 west, I'm going 90 east, but I don't know. And I don't know how to read, for instance. I will keep going on that because I don't know that I'm going the wrong way.
Right.
Until I were to stop and ask, because I can't read, I don't know how to read in English, suppose, until I take the help of a teacher or scriptures, I will keep going down that wrong path. If I pull over and I say, am I going the right way to Boston? I'm going 90 east. And he said, no, Boston's the other way. Sorry, 90 west. He says, no, Boston's the other way. You got to go 90 east. You got to make a U-turn, go. Until that person tells me, I wouldn't know because I didn't know how to read. So this knowledge that you're getting now is the knowledge left to you by your ancestors in the Gita, in the Upanishads, etc. until you take the help of these scriptures, you're going to be going the wrong way.
Yeah.
A Rajasic Buddhi doesn't give good directions to duty and righteousness. So this is not just directions in terms of getting to Boston, but also to duty. What is right? What is wrong? What is righteous? What is not righteous? All of these things fall under the Rajasic Buddhi. Now, a Tamasic Buddhi, which is verse 32, is that which is ignorant and considers what is improper to be proper and everything the exact opposite of what they are. In case of Satvick and Rajasic, you have Buddhi that Satvick is correct Buddhi, Rajasic that is a little mixed up, but can resort to with direction. So, okay, I'll do the right thing if he gets it. In case of Tamasic, he doesn't even understand when told, but rather believes without even knowing that he's right, and even if he's given the direction, cannot take it, won't take it. Because his Buddhi is taken over by Tamas. So he has fanatic beliefs. You tell him, this is not right. You mean you're killing people because you think that that's the right way to do it, because you think God is XYZ. No, I believe you, and for you telling me that, I'm going to kill you. So fanatic beliefs, everything accepted as the opposite of what is true religion or good or spiritual. He accepts and says, okay, I'll take it up. Adharma as dharma, something that is against the proper scriptures or righteous way of doing things, he accepts as right. He accepts not duty as duty, and he does that. It can lead to death, as in the terrorists, violence, as in terrorists, but his Buddhi accepts it to say that's fine. He destroys that Buddhi, Tamasic Buddhi, destroys himself and also everything around him. Viparit means exact opposite. Tamasic goes the exact opposite from where he should be going in terms of life, in terms of what is God, goodness, dharma, religion, duty, everything is the exact opposite. A Rajasic doesn't know which way to go. That's the difference. Tamasic goes the wrong way, the exact opposite. A Rajasic says, I don't know which way to go. Maybe this is the way, this highway, until somebody directs him and says, okay, fine, I'll go the other way. A good, strong Buddhi develops knowledge, and then he gets a vision and he takes the right action. For example, a Tamasic Buddhi is to be compared to a person who is drunk, dead drunk, right? You think of a dead drunk person, if you've ever seen one, then you know what a Tamasic Buddhi is. This person is like that even when he's not drunk. His Buddhi acts like a Tamasic Buddhi. Now, Tamasic Buddhi will tell his children, you have to be aggressive. You have to tell lies. In this world, you're not going to get anywhere unless tell a little bit of a lie. It's a white lie. It's okay. Be aggressive. That's a Tamasic Buddhi. What is not to be done? He says, you got to do this. What is to be done? He says, don't do it. What is improper is proper. Intellect is covered by dullness and ignorance. That is a Tamasic Buddhi. So my friends, my apologies. This was a lot to be packed in all at once. I wanted to stick to our time frame. So we've done up to 32, and we have about 45 more verses. And at the rate that we're going, about what do we do? About 7 weeks more. And then we'll be done with the Gita and we'll move on to something else.
Excellent. Luke, I'm excited, but this part is fun too. And it's funny how, again, this is summation of information, but it's also new information. Of course, we're new. Our knowledge is much more complete, so we're able to deal with it and make better use of it.
Yes, I sincerely hope so. And I would love to hear from you. We are now also on Instagram, and I'm going to get onto Twitter so that people who want to write to me can do that through Facebook Messenger, or through Instagram, and I'll be available to you for your questions. And Lou, I thank you as always for everything.
It's brand new, our Instagram account. Make sure you follow it and keep up with us.
Yeah. Thank you. See you next time.